Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Let's Get Together, a social club for seniors. And this program is being recorded for future viewing on our YouTube and other media channels. So if you are watching this video on YouTube, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can stay current on all of our future recordings. But I am Heather, your host for today's program. Oh, I want to say a special thank you to Aero Cares by Lockheed Martin employees and also Hesta Stewart Christian Trust for grant funding for the program. I can't go any further without saying thank you to them. And so I'm Heather, your host for the program. I also want to throw in that I won bingo yesterday too. So not only am I the host, but I'm the bingo winner. I just have to rub that in.
But well, today, I don't get a chance to play with you anymore, since I'm...
The only reason I'm winning is because Steve isn't playing with me anymore. That he gives me an opportunity to win.
But so I won at 1:30.
We had Story-Wise on the agenda today, but I've done so much traveling lately, I can't hold it in. I have to do a Where in the World is Heather instead. So let me get this screen pulled up. Give me just a moment. And I want to slideshow, play from beginning. There we go.
That black bars are back on your screen. I don't know what happens, Heather.
Really? Man, that stinks. Hold on, let me stop sharing it for a moment.
It was on your introduction screen too.
You know what I think it is? I think whenever I share my screen and I put the audio on, I allow it to share the audio. Yeah. That I think is the problem. Is it still there now?
Okay. I can't see it. It's not come up back up again.
Okay. Can you see the Where in the World is Heather?
No, it still says starting the screen.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Jim, you can see the Where in the World is Heather, right?
Now it's there. That's
okay,
fine.
Beautiful. It looks like it might have been a delay. So I've done a little bit of traveling. So I have a handful of these stacked up. So I'm going to run through this one and I'll start with a couple of hints. I have recently traveled to a location. I'll give you some clues about where I am, and then I would like for you to try to guess my location. So one hint is I'm at a location in the United States. And if you have attended some of the most recent Where in the World is Heather programs, I'm really close to one of the last Where in the World is Heather programs. If you can recall that, or if you saw a recording, may not be coming to you, but let me try to hide this real quick. Let's see. There we go. Okay. I'm in a location that was inhabited by Native American Cherokee people long before European settlers arrived. And I'm in the location that is the known birthplace of Davy Crockett in 1768. I hear Steve's wheels turning. Mr. Jim, do you know where Davy Crockett was born?
Kentucky?
Hmm?
That's what Kentucky? I was going to say.
Is that what you were thinking, Steve?
Yep.
All right. So
is that right?
You're not a bad guesser, my friends. So I also learned in my research that Jack Daniels was actually invented by a fella named Jack Daniels. I didn't realize. I never even thought about it. I never gave it a second thought. But I'm also in a state that Jack Daniels was born in, and he created this whiskey. And he made his whiskey initially from sour mash and then filtered it through maple charcoal. Did you know that that's how whiskey was made before? It was filtered through charcoal and then set in, wooden containers, not too different than the big wooden barrels that it's stored in today.
Yeah, wooden. The most of the barrels are oak,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a very, I'm trying to think of the best
It's
word.
a hard wood.
Yeah, but it's a very, oh, come on, brain. Come on. A lot of people like it to make pens and things out of it because it's just got so much character to it.
Mm.
In fact, you can buy pieces of it's the little certificates. This came from a Jack Daniels, or this came from this type of whiskey barrel type of thing. That you can give when you make your pen or whatever. You can give it to the person, with it. That this is and I've had people actually ordered pens from me and said, I want a Jack Daniels, whiskey barrel pen, or I want some of the other big names in there, whiskey barrel pen. And they're fun though. They're nice. They don't have any of the whiskey smell or anything like that. It's just their oak. But
it's just the oak, and sometimes it kind of turns it a little bit of a color. It stains it.
And the interesting thing about it is I've discovered that you can, with these, I guess because of the aging process, if I do a wet sanding on them, it almost turns them gun barrel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Rather than that bright kind of woodsy thing, it almost turns into a gun barrel color. If you wet sand it. That's really interesting.
It's kind of a more rich color, right? It's deeper. Yeah. That's pretty cool. So I traveled to a state that Davy Crockett was born, and also Jack Daniels was born. And this is probably going to be a dead giveaway, but I am in a state that's known as the home of country music.
So then it have to be Memphis, Tennessee.
You're guessing Tennessee?
Tennessee.
Nashville.
Nashville.
You're saying Nashville, Tennessee? So you're changing your answers from Kentucky to Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Because Oak Ridge is in Tennessee, not Kentucky.
Oak Ridge is in Tennessee. That's right. I skipped that bullet. Yep. So you're absolutely right. I traveled to the state of Tennessee, and I just thought this was so neat, showing all of the different famous folks that are from Tennessee. Of course, then you have the Tennessee Ford with the name of Tennessee. But which of these famous folks are standing out to you?
Of course, Dolly Parton always stands out.
She was made to stand out, wasn't she?
And she's just such a, she's
a character all herself, I think.
Yeah, she is in there. Interesting thing about Jack Daniels is that the person that actually taught him how to do his whiskey was a former slave.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they taught him how to make his whiskey. Yeah.
And make the sugar maple charcoal and stuff. And it's good. Who else is standing out to you on your screen?
Well, Dave Ramsey is there, Morgan Freeman, all of them. I know I've seen all of them, before. Well, Bill Belichick, I don't really know, but I know who he is, But the others, I know pretty well, who they are, what they have done.
I'm not very familiar with George Hamilton, but he looks suave and kind of debonair in the top right-hand corner.
He's an actor who's been in a number of movies.
He almost looks like he could play a James Bond or something.
Yeah, he's
I
played.
remember him escorting President Johnson's daughter
Mhm.
to a gala or some kind of
Soiree.
gathering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was
That was the
known to be a
conversation.
looker.
Did she?
Was he was known to be kind of a looker, huh? A handsome man.
Mhm.
What do you know
Yeah.
about Dave Ramsey?
He's the money man.
He is. First book of his I ever read was Total Money Makeover.
Now he's got a lot of good things. I don't agree with everything,
I totally agree with that statement.
but he's got a lot of good things. And in fact, where I taught at Richardson High School, they allowed them to use his curriculum to teach classes. You know, even though he's a Christian, they taught it basically as a more of a money management type of type of thing.
He also does a lot of leadership stuff too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the teacher that taught it was a Christian, so that's how we got the basis in there. But she was able to teach it as a money management with still some Christian principles within it.
Gotcha.
So anyway, but Tina Turner, Aretha Franklin, some famous people there. Very famous.
Yep. And Kathy Bates, an actress.
Mm-hmm.
That always makes me think of that scary movie with the Bates Motel. I don't remember the name of the name of the movie. Hold on.
She wasn't in that movie, but
I know, but her name always reminds me of that, and then of course Morgan Freeman is known for his unique voice.
He has this voice of God.
Yes.
Yeah. His acting in a number of programs, very good actor.
Yeah. So all of those folks are from Tennessee. Let's see. And any other little tidbits of information that you know about the state of Tennessee? Can you think of anything that sticks out?
Andrew Jackson, one of our presidents, is from Kentucky.
Is he?
As I recall, from Tennessee.
Okay.
The folks that have affiliation with Tennessee football are very proud. It's almost like Baylor fans. They're so proud,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me see. I did pull up a couple of more snippets of information about Tennessee so I can give you more clues on where in Tennessee I am. So this location in Tennessee that I traveled to has a house called Belle Meade Plantation. And on the grounds of this plantation is folks are known for breeding very famous racehorses. And so it's a historical location, a historical landmark within Tennessee, and where thoroughbred racehorses are bred. But one of the most notable racehorses that came from Belle Meade Plantation was War Admiral and Seabiscuit. Those are two record-breaking racehorses.
And Seabiscuit beat War Admiral. War Admiral was basically the premier horse at that point in time. Seabiscuit was underdog, and Seabiscuit just ran away with it.
Really? They raced each other, huh?
Raced each other. He was an underdog. He was like the runt of the litter. you know, and War Admiral is this huge, huge horse, you know, and Easterners had so much pride. Well, Seba was owned by a Californian, you know, and the guys in, you know, from the East Coast says, oh, no animals from California can do this. And so they staged a race and Seabiscuit just ran away with it.
Wow.
Yeah. He was
To
small
me,
compared to,
some of the most
yeah.
unique names are given to racehorses.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Did you ever watch horse racing at all?
I did some, never betting, you know.
Just kind of
Doing the
watch it
fair and
for entertainment.
during rodeo circuit, there were always horse races or cart races or chuck wagon races. There's always, you know, all of that, you know. So I saw a lot of that during my time doing that, you know.
Yeah. Mr. Jim, did you ever go to horse races?
No, I it just doesn't appeal to me. Plus, I'd rather not contribute to something that can be habitual.
It's
with
true. Some people get
Yeah.
sucked into
Well,
it.
That's my personal.
Yeah.
You know, I never bet, but I was in a couple places. I was in where the jockeys and the trainers were and things like that, and that was more interesting to me than ever betting on horses. You know,
Kind of
just
seeing the culture.
Yeah.
To me, you know, when I went along with a friend, the show is in the gallery.
Yeah.
Seeing who all going where, and that must be so and so. I bet.
And the women wear the big hats.
Yes.
So
that's entertainment.
It is. It is. It is. Yeah. So I also, so you mentioned Andrew Jackson earlier, and Andrew Jackson actually had a home at one point in time in this location in Tennessee that I traveled to. And so he was the 7th president of the United States, and he lived at this home for a period of time until he died in 1845. And so this is a historical marker in Tennessee, and the location that I went to. It's his former home, and it is one of the largest presidential homes that is still standing and is open to the public, for the public to go in and view.
Andrew Jackson was not one of the best presidents. He was the Trail of Tears president.
I went to a powwow one time, and there was this whole, it's this whole festivity. It was just days and days of, this festival. And I brought some cash with me because there were vendors selling different things. And when I went up to a number of different booths and wanted to buy jewelry or food or something that they were selling, the people that were selling it, when I went to buy it with a $20 bill, they said, I would rather give it to you than take your $20 bill. Yeah.
Because he's on the $20 bill.
Because he's on the 20.
Yeah. That was probably one of the most atrocious things the American government ever did in our nation. The Trail of Tears.
I didn't, needless to say, I didn't walk away with their stuff that they would rather give me for free than take my money. I just said, let me find a way to go break this. So then I went to a restaurant or something and broke it and had smaller bills.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
So, the location I traveled to in Tennessee also is known to be the birthplace of the Seeing Eye Dog training facility. So the first Seeing Eye Dogs were trained at this location. It was in 1929, and the training was formally done at an institution by a blind student at Vanderbilt University. Am I dropping some hints on where I am now?
Closer.
Okay, so this blind student learned about an article about dogs that could help blind World War I veterans. And so he got this idea about formally training dogs to help other blind individuals, not necessarily only assisting veterans. And he formally put together the first Seeing Eye Dog School at this location in Tennessee. And then as it grew over the next few years, they relocated this school to a location in New Jersey, like 3 years later, I think, 2-3 years later, because the climate there offered better training conditions for the dogs. So the very first Seeing Eye Dog School was here. Do you know of anyone who has ever used a Seeing Eye Dog?
I probably should be.
Well, I would spend all my time rolling around on the floor and playing with it instead of actually doing anything productive.
Yeah, I've known one person in the past. I also know somebody who has had a service dog because she had epilepsy. And the dog was trained to respond to seizures. You know, and that was interesting because she was student teaching in my high school, and at first a lot of people were put off, why is this dog here in the school? Until they found that the reason was for health issues. You know, of course, the only other dogs they ever saw in high school were the drug dogs.
Yes.
And they stayed away from those.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. And you can't pet them.
You know, yeah.
Yeah. I know a lady who has a dog that's trained to smell her food and alert her if there's if it has peanuts or anything in it that she's allergic to.
Dogs are so smart. They really are.
They definitely are. So also the location that I traveled to in Tennessee is where Oprah Winfrey launched her career. And she attended a state university here. And she was the youngest and the first Black female news anchor at a local television station called WLAC TV. And so while she was in college, she obtained a career or a job really at this news channel. And then she ended up going from, she started at a radio station and then went to a news channel. That's what it was. And in both of those careers on the radio and on the local news, she won a couple of different awards. And one of those awards was a scholarship. And she used that scholarship to go to college and continue pursuing her career. But Oprah Winfrey launched her career at this location in Tennessee that I traveled to. And then, in addition, this place in Tennessee that I visited, it's known for having the largest Kurdish population in the United States. Is this ringing a bell? Are you familiar with any of this? Okay. I was not. This was news to me whenever I started researching the town that I went to. So of the 40,000 Kurds living in the United States, about 15,000 of them live in this area. So that's what, about 30 something percent of the Kurdish population in the United States lives here. And then most of these individuals arrived in the 1970s as refugees. And so this area for locals is known as Little Kurdistan. Really, really good food. Okay. So more hints about where I am. The place I traveled to in Tennessee is named after an American Revolutionary War hero named Francis Nash. And originally, this area I traveled to was named Fort Nashboro. And then in 1784, it changed to the name that we know of it today. But it's named after Francis Nash. Any ideas on where I traveled to in Tennessee?
Yes.
I'm getting closer and closer. Getting warmer and
Yes,
warmer.
I've been to Tennessee a number of times.
Have you? It's a beautiful, beautiful state. So what's funny is Francis Nash wasn't even from Tennessee. He was from North Carolina. But because of the work that he did during the Revolutionary War, he was admired by a lot of individuals living in Tennessee. So they decided to name a settlement after him. So I went to Nashville, named after Francis Nash. Have you ever traveled to Nashville, Tennessee?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you? When was the last time you traveled there?
Oh my. Well, I've driven through it a number of times. As far as for staying there, it's probably been quite a while ago.
Okay. Did you go for work or pleasure?
I went to a conference.
A conference, okay.
But I know a lot of people from Nashville since Red did the fair circuit. There's a lot of folks from the Nashville area. Yeah.
It's a very unique area, no doubt. Jim, have you ever traveled to Nashville, Tennessee?
Yes.
How long
Yes.
ago did you travel there last?
I guess it must be in the early 80s.
Okay. Did you go for work or pleasure?
Pleasure. Yeah.
Do you recall anything that you did there? Any sightseeing or anything that you did?
Yes, with my family, I did. That was
Okay.
much earlier.
Okay.
And our boys were in their teens. And so the Civil War history really, the Methodist Church downtown, McKendree Memorial Church, was established before the Civil War, and the Union used the church as a hospital.
Oh, really?
And you could, yeah, and down where they used to keep their slaves, all of that was now part of the railroad.
Nice.
Giving some flight. Yeah. Giving folks flight.
Nice. So when you traveled with your boys,
yeah.
did you do the historical thing and learn about all of the different landmarks?
Yeah, I was primarily going on my own in terms of seeing certain people that I needed to see that's affiliated with the church. And so they were delightful. They kind of got me started way back when.
Yeah.
And were very much calling. And so when first time they met Linda, one of the things he asked Linda was, "Do you play the piano?" And he said, "Well, climb up here." And so she did, and played the piano like a Baptist. And that it was great. Yeah,
good.
that I'd made.
Yeah, when I went to Nashville, it was actually at that point in time the Southern Baptist Sunday School Board, but now it was Lifeway. They had brought in all of the new ministers of education to give them kind of an introduction, orientation to all of their products and what they do and things like that. So I was there for that,
Fun. Well, I can only imagine Nashville looks and feels and sounds wildly different than it did years ago whenever you traveled there. So let's talk a little bit more about what Nashville specifically is known for. Obviously, the Country Music Hall of Fame. I mean, most people who travel to Nashville have a, you hear a bunch of country music, whether you like current country music or country music from decades ago. You can hear it in Nashville. I think it's really neat because the outside of the building of the Country Music Hall of Fame looks like a large keyboard. If you can see it on the right-hand side of the screen. And then on the left-hand side of the screen is an image from inside the building. And when you're standing in the center, all around you, you can see a sign that just repeats itself. Will the circle be unbroken? I'm sure you guys have heard that song before, but so Nashville is one of the biggest country music hubs in all of the United States. And so of course it just makes sense that the Nashville Hall of Fame would be there. But at the museum, they showcase all things country music. So some are previous, I mean, they're stars that were that are not with us any longer, but they made headlines and made hits decades ago, all the way up to the present. So they do a really good job of showcasing years and years of country music heritage. And then the longest running live music radio show. Any guesses on what that is?
Grand Ole Opry.
Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever listen to that radio show, the Grand Ole Opry?
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
Of course. So they still do shows. And the way where it started from the live recording on the radio with the stage to where it is now, it has changed and evolved over the years, but they're still doing shows today. And the show first started out only on the radio, and then it became so popular that they started selling tickets to have people come in and listen to this small little hub as it's being played on the radio. And then it turned into no more radio and only live shows. So it's kind of changed a little bit over time. But they still do performances a couple times every week, and it's different all the time. And the original in-person shows were what you see on the left side of the screen. And then now on the right side of the screen is this huge event center with these whole backstage. I mean, it's like a maze that you go through backstage, and you can get some VIP tours and pay extra, of course, to meet the performers before or after the show. But they have this huge guitar out front. It's just this big sightseeing kind of place to travel to. But it's an iconic landmark.
To many country stars, it's kind of the equivalent of winning the Oscar to perform at the opera.
Yeah, I could see that. I can absolutely see that. So it first started in the Ryman Auditorium. It's where they played a few live performances before they had their own individual Opry. But playing at the Ryman is the original home of the Grand Ole Opry, and performers played there from 1943 to 1974. And I'm sure you've heard of the Ryman Auditorium.
Yeah.
So whenever I went, I specifically went to go visit friends. So we took out somebody's boat and had a bunch of kids gather around, and we popped fireworks and all kinds of good stuff. Of course, the kids played around so much and went swimming and just exerted all their energy. They fell asleep. And so we had to kind of wrap it up, but we wore the kids out. And I don't know how often you have an adult wearing kids out, but we wore them out. They had a blast. But I went to see friends in Nashville not too long ago. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right.
Good
That sounds like
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks for letting me kind of do a little switcheroo on the program today instead of Story-Wise and doing that one. I was itching to tell that one. That one I knew was going to be good. So I thank you for being my guinea pigs.
We still had Story-Wise.
We did. We shared some stories and wisdom.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, tomorrow
Yeah.
we have Fitwits with Emily. And then on Friday, we have Pets Are Practical with Kate and her dog Jet.
Okay.
All right. That's it. That's all I've got for you today.
Well, thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you're here with us.
Thanks for joining us, Jim.
Yes.
I love your company.
Gladly.
All right. Well, I'll see you
Thank
cats
you.
later.
Yeah,
Have a beautiful day.
appreciate you.
Yes, sir. You too.
Appreciate you.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.